I had been going for 22 years as a senior pastor. I was flying at Mach 4. And one of the things about being an entrepreneurial kind of person is that by default, everything you start, you're now the leader of it. You start a church, you're the pastor. You start a Bible college, you're the president. You start a church planning organization, you're the director. You start whatever, you're the cheese. And so by default, I'm running all of these different departments, and I was just frying. I didn't know what was happening. This load was coming upon me more and more and more. But, in those days, you think you're invincible. In those days, I could break both legs in the morning, and I'd heal by noon. I'd be playing basketball. Yeah, when you think you're invincible, like before, I could eat anything and not gain any weight. Now I just chew on an idea and I gain 5 pounds. Isn't that right? So when everything is going full blast, all of a sudden, things in me start to slow down. And I don't catch this dichotomy until it's too late. There were some symptoms. There was some joy that was leaking. I mean, ministry wasn't fun anymore. It was a task. And people were not the reason for my ministry. People became a problem to be avoided. And I would start just kind of shying away from phone calls. And decisions that used to be easy now came hard. I used to be able to make them so quickly. But now I deliberated until I was polarized and then paralyzed. My creativity started to flag. And I would rather duplicate rather than incarnate. I'd find out what you're doing, just duplicate it. But I wasn't hearing God anymore for fresh manna, for fresh stuff. And the fear started to come in. And when people would bring a problem into my office, Wayne, we've got parking problems. Wayne, we got this. In my mind, they were saying, you're not doing enough. Work harder. And I began to avoid problems. And what I didn't know was that there was a meltdown that was starting on the inside. I started thinking about retiring. At that time, I was 52, and I was thinking, do I have enough money to retire? Can I just retire? Can I do something different? And it became something that almost overwhelmed my thinking. What I didn't know was on the inside, a meltdown had started. The problem is you're all high-capacity leaders here. And you catch a vision, but after a while, you can't get out of the vision. It's almost like the vision imprisons you. And I can't stop. I got all of these things going, and I can't stop. And I was frying on the inside. And I didn't know it. Then the physical symptoms started. The physical symptoms began where I had a hard time breathing. And I thought it was asthma, and I went to the doctor and got these inhalers. And then my heart began to get a little erratic, and my eyes started twitching like, Clouseau and the Pink Panther. And I couldn't stop it. I thought, what is going on? But it all came to a head when I was speaking in a conference in California. I didn't know what was going on, but there was a meltdown on the inside. But, you just keep going because you can't stop. Everyone's expecting you to continue. You're strong, invincible. And I was out for a run, and I don't know where along the run, I can't even recall this in my memory, but I found myself sitting on the curb, and I just found myself crying. I was crying, and I couldn't stop my crying, and I was sobbing. And I looked at myself like this, and I thought, what in the world is going on? It was like I was looking at myself thinking, what is happening to me? This can't be happening. And I began to weep and weep and weep. You see, I was empty on the inside. I was a dead leader running. When I got back home, I sat with a doctor, a psychiatrist, and I said, what in the world is happening to me? And as I parlayed the scenario out to him, he said, Wayne, your serotonin levels are completely depleted. And I said, Sarah who? Can you get her back on the job? He said, no, serotonin. It's like an endorphin. And if you continue to go and you don't replenish your system, what happens is you deplete it, and then you substitute it with adrenaline. And when that happens, that which began your ministry, the fuel is now going to destroy it unless you switch it back. And you've been going on adrenaline as a substitute for your serotonin for far too long, and you've got to recharge that serotonin level. You see, one of the problems we have, people, is that we don't forget that we're pastors. We forget that we're human. And he said, you've got to charge that back up. And I said, well, how do I get that charge back up? I said, can you just hook me up, give me a pill? He said, no, you don't charge this overnight. It's sort of like it trickle charges. It takes a while. You're going to need 6 months or more to just lay still and get some rest. I said, 6 months? No way. I'd go stir crazy. He said, no, you got to take. I said, I can maybe take 6 to 8 weeks, but that's it. He said, you've got to do something because you're frying your circuits right now. And if you don't handle this season right, he said, you will never return to the original capacity or productivity that you had before. You see, suffering will change you, but not always for the better. You have to choose that. See, 1 Peter 4:19 says this. It says, let also those who suffer according to the will of God entrust their souls to a faithful Creator in doing what is right. Do you hear that? Let those who suffer according to the will of God. Did you know that there's a way to suffer that's according to the will of God, and there's a way that we can suffer that's not according to the will of God? One will destroy you. The other one will reform you and refashion you. And he was saying, if you don't handle this correctly, you will lose much of that capacity. And then he said something that just got me thinking. He said, Wayne, often the road to what you perceive as success, the road to success and the road to a nervous breakdown are sometimes the very same road.